we provide offshore support mainly for OEM companies in Asia and Mexico. And my relation with Mexico is that I run the Mexico office and also Europe operations. And we help companies to establish in Mexico, whether by sourcing efforts with local suppliers or by helping them to a soft landing effort where we help them to establish themselves either on a greenfield, brownfield, or whatever it's the best option for them. Cost, of course, it's a motivation, but it's not everything. So as they said, they are starting to cost some other factors. Of course, lately, situations such as COVID and then geopolitical situations have driven companies to look on more or less risky solutions. So I see it more as a mitigation strategy initially, where they tend to see alternatives for potential supply chain interruption. We can also include, for example, the cost of logistics with the containers increase in the past 1 or 2 years. So all of those factors are motivating companies to look at Mexico. And why Mexico? Well, of course, time to market and close to the US is very important, but also there are some other factors such as the cultural link between Mexico and US, the time zone, and the willingness of Mexican companies to work together with companies in terms of developing cost reduction strategies, design capabilities, and also Mexico is a very important point of entry, not only for the US, but also Mexico has a lot of international trades with many other countries in South America and Europe that makes Mexico like a base line of manufacturing to supply basically the whole world if that's needed. Every trade with every other country or region has their own rules, but basically all of them stand for the level of integration that it's done in Mexico. So you can import goods from many other countries, and as long as you comply with certain level of integration in Mexico, it's now allowed to be called made in Mexico or manufactured in Mexico, and then you can enter those other markets. Compared to the European Union, I mean, we're way over international trades, and certainly Mexico is like the point of entry to Latin America and South America. There has been some other countries that have tried in South America to enter the US market in many other segments, such as, for example, agriculture, and they did huge investments to get into the US market, but just the length of the logistics, it doesn't help. We have seen a wave of companies, Asian companies coming into Mexico, specifically from China, because we are seeing a trend where the Chinese manufacturers are reading what might come in the future, and they are actually establishing manufacturing in Mexico. So, and that manufacturing is being spread out of Mexico, but it's mostly concentrated in the northern part of Mexico. For sure, consumer electronics have been playing a higher role lately, and this is part of the same. And whenever a customer approaches to us to look for alternative solutions in Mexico, we always tend to advise them to first look at local sourcing with a local manufacturer. And the ideal scenario is that they find a reliable supplier that has all of that trade agreements in place and the tariff, harmonized tariff code very well established. So because there are variances in each of the products and the level of content. So consumers products that went away in the early 2000s are starting to come back. They will never come back as they were prior to 2000, but certainly it's part again of the risk mitigation that I was telling you. Customers are starting to diversify a little bit and maybe start putting 15-20% of their consumer products in Mexico and leaving 80% in China, and then they will be prepared for another potential supply chain disruption. Now, regarding the combination, again, it depends on each of the product, but we have to take in mind that most of the components of the consumer electronics are still manufactured in China. So then it's a matter of bringing them into Mexico, and that's where you need to find a local content of your product, and that stands for mainly plastics, chassis, some cables and harnesses that can build up to a reasonable bill of material cost that can compensate for all of the rest, resistors, capacitors, etc. I will say that is around 50-60% maybe content. Yeah. So, but maybe you could do 50-60% with 3 or 4 commodities local wise, and then you will get 60 or 80 other part numbers coming out of China with a very low cost. The talent mitigation strategy that I will recommend is to first define through a good landscape analysis where does your product and industry better fits into Mexico geography. Basically, we have 3 geography areas in Mexico, which is the north that includes most of the border cities, plus San Luis Potosí, which is another close to north automotive cluster. We have the Bajío that includes Guadalajara, that it's also a lot of electronics and appliances type of industry, and we have the center, which goes to Mexico City, Puebla, and Toluca. So by defining an ideal location with a good landscape analysis, the chances of talent issues will be decreased. The pool of universities in Mexico is very strong, so from manager and up levels, I don't think there will be that of an issue. I think the skilled labor might be a little bit more in risk in the future, but again, if you find the right spot for your product, you will be less impacted by that. There is a lot of combination and teamwork between universities and companies, but it's believe it or not, it's not that the universities has the equipment to train the students, but it's the companies that are bringing the universities in to work inside the companies and learn from live processes and make projects inside the companies. So that is happening all over Mexico in the manufacturing industries, because the universities will never be able to keep up to speed with the latest technology or latest equipment. So it's a little bit backwards how it's being played right now. Okay, the very first question is to define if you want to make or buy. If you want to make your own product in Mexico with your standalone facility, or you want to buy it from someone else. Or if you want to buy, we provide sourcing projects, so you got a feeling and a taste of many potential suppliers for your product. So that will give you a very good taste of how it is in Mexico. Now, if you wanna make, you can go through merger and acquisition, or you can go by greenfield or brownfield. Merger and acquisitions in Mexico are a little bit difficult, different to other countries. So we have done both, but we have seen that the time that takes from an M&A process or a standalone process is almost the same. And sometimes we have been cases where companies started to do an M&A exercise, and then 8 or 12 months after that, they decide to go as standalone. So they lost already 10 to 12 months. You can enter through shuttle services. That's a safe start point. But also, if you want to own your own operation from the beginning to the end, You can just buy land and make your own building per your needs, or you can find existing building that the real estate offer in Mexico is very heavy right now in many areas. So that way you can make your tenant improvements at your building and customize the building for your needs. In any case, what you should consider, it's a good analysis over the time. What we recommend is like a factory cost, what we call like a factory cost projection. Basically goes with direct labor, indirect and salary, building, other overhead costs and logistics. Can start from maybe $18 per hour. And as you ramp up your product, you can lower that down up to maybe $14, $13 per hour. From that, you need also to add the SG&A, raw materials, amortization, and depreciation, but it's pretty much the thing. So, so when you do those numbers, and of course, finding an ideal location, finding where the right labor skills are, the right labor costs, and also be careful with the government entities in Mexico, because although they do a great job, every state has their own economic promotion institute. If you have someone that helps you identify the real T's and C's behind the offerings of the states, and someone that is not biased and has your own shirt, that is my recommendation. Well, it's been challenging because, as you know, there is an inflation in the US and there is an inflation in Mexico. Labor costs in Mexico are based in pesos. So the peso, the currency has been benefit from the exchange rate from the US around 20% in the last couple of years. So plus there is inflation in Mexico. Plus companies are exporting to the US, are exporting in US dollars, so they're getting less pesos and they're spending more pesos in direct labor. So it's been a challenge. I think this trend will be corrected the next year. Right now, the direct labor cost is in the range of $3.80, close to $4 per hour, unskilled direct labor, in terms of dollars. Okay, because you need to take in mind the inflation and the exchange rate. So it's challenging, but the market itself and the industry itself is trying to accommodate, and they're starting to make cost reductions in some other areas to compensate for that. And my guess is that next year will be established. I think the exchange rate for next year will be in the range of 18.50, close to 19, pretty much. Right now it's at 17.5 pesos per dollar. My piece of advice is that when you decide to establish in Mexico, or to look into Mexico, you should find someone that becomes your eyes on the ground to look on all of those factors and really represent your interests, not the specific region's interests. That is key to success. And also, when you decide to come in, there are three key partners that you also need to select, not only the one that is looking at your interests, but also you need to find a very good legal firm that helps you establish well in Mexico. You need to also partner with a good real estate company. Either you want to buy land or rent or whatever. And you also need to have a very reliable accounting firm aside you. And all of those services are very well established in Mexico. There are many, but there are not that many that have the experience to treat with foreign companies and walk them through all the process to avoid any disruptions in the future.